Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Cope. I'm with RTI Innovation Advisors and would like to welcome you to this afternoon's case study where we'll be featuring the digital transformation that is underway at DuPont. I'm pleased to have with me my fellow speaker today and one of the key architects of DuPont's journey thus far, Bernardo Tiburcio. We will have some insights from Bernardo as we go through today's session. You'll also have an opportunity to chat with us during the session and afterwards at the panel discussion immediately after the break. Let me provide a little context for today's discussion before we dive into some of the details of DuPont's journey. This is the DuPont story, which we have just published and which is available on the IRI website. Is one of a series of 6 case studies that RTI and IRI are conducting. We're examining the digital transformation journey that legacy companies are undertaking as they explore how to move into and how to execute on digital transformation in their overall journey. So we have thus far published 3 case studies, one on Michelin, one on USG, and the third most recent with DuPont. I encourage you to take a look at those. The intent of these case studies is to help share lessons learned and experiences from these legacy companies. How have they moved through a digital transformation, and what have they learned from that? So we want to share these lessons learned so that others who are maybe earlier in their journey can benefit from the lessons learned and experienced thus far. We've put together a common framework that we're using as we examine each of these digital transformation case studies. And the first framework I want to mention is 4 stages of transformation. We start by looking at the impetus for digital transformation. What are those internal or external stimuli that will prompt an organization to explore and ultimately act on activities that we will call digital transformation. From impetus, we move into preparation. What are those particular actions and decisions that an organization has to make to say we're gonna take some action. We're gonna prepare for undertaking this digital transformation journey. And then we look at the actions that preparation leads to. Ultimately, we end with looking at how does this transformation maintain itself? How does it continue to grow and evolve once it gets up to a certain point and starts to become an established and understood initiative within an organization? So we can look at that journey that an organization's on through these 4 lenses, through these 4 stages. We also have a 6 lens framework that we've created to help us understand the full breadth of what's required for successful digital transformation. Digital transformation is, at its heart, a change management initiative, a change management undertaking. And so if we want to understand the full impact and the full influence that digital transformation has on an organization, we need to look more broadly than just the technology and data lens that you see in the bottom left corner. And so through these case studies, we are intentionally exploring how does digital transformation influence or how has it been influenced by many other aspects of change management. So those range from corporate culture, resources, human resources, investment resources that are applied. How are teams being structured and grown that are focused on digital transformation? How does digital transformation align to a corporate strategy, and how does the digital transformation strategy itself evolve over time? And then what are the offerings and opportunities that are pursued as a driving force for digital transformation? So there's many aspects that we can explore about a digital transformation journey through these 6 lenses. And this has given us a common framework to use as we explore and build out case studies for each of the 6 companies that we will profile. So given that, let's talk a little bit about digital transformation at DuPont. I've set the stage now, so let's explore a little bit about DuPont and the journey that is underway there. DuPont may not be a household name, but it's certainly a company that we are all familiar with. They have a legacy of over 200 years of operation. Yet recently, in the past few years, went through a massive transformation through a merger with Dow and then a subsequent rearranging of multiple companies spinning out of that merger. And so essentially they are a new company reborn in 2019 with this long history and legacy, but sort of starting fresh in 2019. And digital transformation was a central part, a central tenet of that new transformation. You'll hear more about that in just a minute. DuPont at its heart is creating science-based products. They're working across a number of different industries. You can see them listed here on the screen. They're actively pursuing how to bring new innovation and new material science-based solutions and products to a number of different markets. We're familiar with many of their products, including Kevlar and Tyvek and Kapton. The case study that we have just recently completed and published was a fascinating exploration into the journey that DuPont has been on. And given more time, I would love to talk about many other facets of their digital transformation journey. I'm going to speak to just a few, and I encourage you to take a look at the case study in depth. There's a lot to learn from their experience, and I greatly appreciate how forthcoming and how detailed the DuPont team was in sharing their experiences. Four things that stand out to me as particularly novel about their digital transformation journey. Starting at the top, they've intentionally created a very nimble and agile strategy development process. So instead of defining a, say, 3-year or 5-year digital transformation strategy, they've been very intentional about creating much smaller timescale, more operative kinds of strategies. So each year, the strategy evolves, it pivots, it learns. They learn from that year's experience, they pivot to the next set of goals. So I think that is a very wise move given all of the moving parts and the fast changes that are undertaking digital technologies that undergird these strategies. The path to value framework, and we'll hear more from Bernardo on this in a moment. The path to value framework, very interesting approach. A lot of digital transformation undertakings, especially in the early days, focus on or kind of center around proof of concept. Let's prove this technology is applicable and viable and useful in a given business situation. What the DuPont team has identified is something that moves beyond that and says, before we undertake that, let's figure out what the value of this new digital solution might be. How do we measure its impact? How do we quantify that it is a worthwhile undertaking? And so this path to value has proven to be a very useful decision-making framework, and it's helped allocate resources appropriately. And we'll hear more about that in just a moment. Another thing that stands out to me about the DuPont experience has been a very intentional effort on the front end to engage with and collaborate with business and function leaders across the vast enterprise that is DuPont. They obviously started with a lot of executive support. Most digital transformation undertakings do. The ones that are successful certainly do. But beyond that, their intentional effort to engage with and understand the needs and concerns of business unit leaders, functional unit leaders across the organization proved to be very effective and very influential on not only choosing the right projects to demonstrate as early wins, but also to build a groundswell of support across the organization. Say, this is something that we care about and something that we want to pursue. The last point I want to highlight from the case study is a very clear drive toward moving from digital capabilities to digital products. And as the team has identified common needs across the enterprise, needs that digital solutions could provide, they've turned those into digital products that they can then scale across the enterprise. So as they prove out a digital product works in business unit A, they've now got something that's much more portable and scalable to move into other business units across the enterprise. And I think this intentional focus on a product offering makes that scalability much more impactful. So those are a few of my key takeaways, lessons learned from exploring the digital transformation at DuPont. Let's now open it up to and hear firsthand experiences from Bernardo. Let me bring you into the conversation. Thank you for, first of all, for being so active in sharing your experiences with the case study, with the experiences so far, and for being part of this discussion today. So thank you for making time to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a great experience so far. So thank you for everything.
Let's start with this genesis, this impetus of the digital transformation undertaking at DuPont, which has a name. So let's call it Spark Digital. Spark Digital and the digital transformation got underway in the midst of this massive upheaval and corporate change that was taking place. Can you talk a little bit about some of the experience of starting this digital effort in the midst of this, perhaps chaotic time?
Absolutely. So it was very interesting times. As you mentioned already, when we started our digital transformation program, we were right in the middle of a big merger and working on subsequent spin-offs or splits into different companies. And while we were doing that, we were also strategizing about the creation of a new DuPont. So this new company that was going to come out of all of this transformation. And obviously, it was very challenging to get some of the key resources availability to help us with the program in a lot of different ways. But as a matter of fact, this situation was actually a big catalyst for us. Because one of the things that we actually discovered back then, when the purpose of this new DuPont company was created, our purpose actually is to empower the world with essential innovations to thrive. And when you talk about that's the purpose of the company, digital comes hand to hand with innovation. So for us, something that was very helpful was clearly connecting the goals of our company with the drivers of this digital transformation effort. And that helped us since the very beginning to get alignment and support from top leadership in the organization. As you mentioned, Jeff, leaders from the businesses, leaders from the functions in the company.
It's a fascinating backdrop for, for the beginning of a digital effort. Thanks for sharing that. One thing I commented on a minute ago that I think is really interesting from your experience is this intentionally nimble and agile digital strategy. So using kind of 1 year increments, continuing to pivot and learn and grow from that. What have you seen as some of the benefits to that approach versus saying we're going to cast a 3-year vision, 5-year vision of what digital will be?
Yeah, that it's also kind of a necessity because of the work that we do, right? The whole digital transformation for us is all about bringing emerging technologies, number one, to solve the top business priorities and challenges. So think about it, both things, both emerging technologies and top business priorities are changing very rapidly, are very dynamic. So that's basically giving us or throwing us the challenge of how do we keep constantly renewing our strategy, renewing our focus to actually be more effective. So that's why we created the Spark evolution model that I think you have it right here. Exactly, and then rather than picking that technology and something and then just say we're going to drive this for 3 years, what we created is a constant evolution process where we start at the Spark 1.0 to look at what are those emerging technologies that have great potential to deliver value to the companies. And at that stage, we created the concept of the proof of value. Is we need to demonstrate that this particular technology, this kind of solution is actually going to translate to business value. And for those that are successful, where the proof of value is successful, then we move to the next stage, which is a lighthouse program, a more intentional approach of taking these capabilities, start putting together or understanding the needs around skills, platforms, and so on. And then for those successful Lighthouse programs, we graduate them into Spark 3.0, which is the other concept that you were mentioning of our product offerings. When we talk about doing these product offerings, is basically just package all of that solution in a way that is more easily consumable by the businesses, where they understand more clearly the effort, the cost, and everything that they are going to need to drive that value. And eventually, as we continue this process, you go into a Spark 4.0, which is when those capabilities that you brought into the company now become embedded in the organization. You move it either to the businesses to go with it or run and maintain, freeing up a space from the Spark Digital team to keep bringing new technologies. And then basically every year, we look at what are the business priorities at that point. We look at what other emerging technologies we need to bring, or what are the gaps that we have, and continuously driving this process.
This seems like a brilliant move in hindsight. Can you say a little bit more about what drove the decision, or what influenced the decision to create a more nimble, agile process on the front end? What were some of the thinking that went into, we need to take this in year-long bites?
Absolutely, right? It's kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning is we are all about emerging technologies to solve top priorities. And both top priorities and emerging technologies are constantly evolving and changing. We have to be agile. We have to be nimble on how we drive our strategy. If we set up a 3-year program on implementing an emerging technology, by the time we are done, that's already obsolete. So that's the driver.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant move. A lot of digital transformation teams talk about applying Agile, and they're applying that to their digital product development process, right? Mm-hmm. This is taking it to the next level and thinking about, okay, the strategy and how we execute the digital transformation needs to be Agile as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant move. You mentioned path to value, proof of value. Let's dive into that a little bit more. I think that's one of the really interesting aspects of the journey you've been on and how you're making decisions. Can you talk a little bit about how path to value framework came together and how you're using it and some of the benefits of it?
Absolutely. So because of what you are displaying right now, since the very beginning on the inception of the program, something that was very clear, kind of given to us of how we were going to drive the program, is that almost all of the efforts that we do, almost all of the projects that we start in Spark Digital need to be clearly connected to a quantifiable value for the businesses that we are delivering. So we try to avoid the shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh, this technology seems very interesting. Let's play with it and do things like that. Yeah, we do some experimentations, but everything that we do has to be connected of what is the business problem that we're trying to solve? How is the business going to benefit from the work that we are doing? So that's exactly why we don't use a lot the term of proof of concept on what we do in Spark Digital. We do proof of values. Now, the other challenge with this particular initiative is, well, now that we are doing proof of values and actually quantifying the benefits is so important for us, how can we actually be consistent on how we deliver value? So Jim Hunt, one of our value delivery leaders in the team, he came up with this concept that we call path to value. And it's basically just this framework, this approach of how we consistently calculate benefits of the work that we do, the products that we have in Spark Digital to the business. And it's interesting, but it's also very, very simple. Basically, it's just a step, each step of the path. You start by defining, okay, what is the value area that we are going to tackle in this particular case? Is this, for example, for customer experience? Is this about intelligent process optimization? Is this about digital reliability? What is what we are trying to focus on? Once you define that, the next step is to focus on what are the key performance indicators that you are going to use to measure the benefits that you are bringing to the business. So things like on-time delivery or improving uptime or improving yield. And then once you specify that key performance indicator, the next step is for you to identify the type of financial benefit that you are achieving. You can actually get a cost reduction process or increase the revenue or improve your cash. So what is that area? And then based on very specific business metrics, you can convert the improvement estimate that you say, if you're going to improve this key performance indicator by 10%, you can translate that into a net present value dollar amount. That's what we use, number one, to prioritize our projects, and number two, to track and demonstrate the value to the businesses.
Imagine that's been a big benefit to be able to have common conversations, or you're kind of working from a common language to make decisions with your potential customers of digital products, with leaders up the chain who need to support or provide funding for. So I think it seems like there's big benefit to taking this kind of approach. Anything else you want to say about benefits of path to value?
So there are others, right? Once you quantify this value, all of the conversations around growing the program or steering the program into different directions and connecting the value that the program brings to the specific business objectives make it a lot easier when you can actually quantify, when you can actually align the work that you're doing with the specific financial goals of each one of the businesses. That's how we do it.
Great, thank you. Another thing that I'd love to talk about or dive into a little bit is this intentional effort to create productized offerings. I think it's easy to, you talked about shiny object syndrome. It's easy to get enamored with technology and have this sort of, it's a hammer looking for a nail, right? We're trying to push a technology into a space. You've taken a very different approach, which is to start from problems, do the path to value, create some frameworks to understand what's the value that we can deliver on a solution. And as you've found those needs, you've been able to build this portfolio of product offerings that you can now kind of scale across the business. Can you say a little bit about some of the strategy behind that, and what are some of the benefits of promoting products versus promoting capabilities?
Absolutely. And if you remember what I was telling you about the evolution of Spark at the beginning of the program, when we were actually just focusing on proof of value, all of the work that we were doing was actually driven around solutions or around technologies, right? That was good because that allowed us to demonstrate or confirm the value or the areas where we can actually bring the most value to the company. But as we were doing more of this, the problem is that then you need to go with each business and individually creating a business case for each one of those. That's time consuming and a lot of repetitive work. The other problem is because we have all of these individual things going on, we start getting some feedback from the business that we were just doing random acts of digital. That's what they were calling it. So it's like, yeah, we are doing a lot of digital projects. We are demonstrating the value of each one of those, but how all of this work connects and what is the roadmap? What is the long-term strategy? That's when we evolved into the product offerings. By you productionizing an offering, like putting this particular solution packaged in a way that you can clearly articulate what's the outcome of what you are doing, where you can build the right platforms, the right skills to support it so you can make it more repeatable, do it faster, do it cheaper. And that makes the conversations with the businesses a lot easier. And at the same time, it allows the businesses to be better at planning how they are going to start rolling out this capability. They can actually put these products and say, well, now I know that this is going to take me 12 weeks and I can do 4 of these through the year. It's going to cost me this much and it's going to give me this much value. So it fits into their planning processes a lot better when you productionize it this way.
Yeah, it seems like it helps the businesses, as you said, kind of understand what they're buying into, and that certainly should help with scalability, right? As you look to kind of move into the next phase more broadly, scaling these offerings across the business,
Exactly.
having that as a product to promote and help people understand it, benefits of it, seems like a good way to go.
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about talent. I didn't bring that up before in my points, but I think it's always interesting as we look into companies and how they're tackling digital transformation to see what's that optimal mix of developing in-house talent, maybe upskilling or hiring in the right kind of talent, and yet leaning on external talent and capabilities. And I know we talk in the case study a little bit about kind of striving for this optimal mix of maybe 60% in-house talent, 40% external. So talk a little bit about sort of the talent development aspects that have been taking place thus far and where you've been, where you're headed. It'd be great to hear.
Excellent. And this is one of our great learnings, right? Because we've tried different things and some things work better than others. And I think that the big learning over there about how you build this thing, how do you balance internal versus external talents and what kind of skills, it has a lot to do with where you are in that journey. So it's all about picking the right partner for the right time in the program and for the right kind of work as well. So some of the things that you need to consider to strike this ideal balance of external and internal, I think number one is you need to deep dive into your organization and really understand what are your current skills and competencies on your teams, what kind of talent you already have and what kind of gaps you have. From all different levels, from the developers to the Scrum teams to the project managers and all of these different roles. In our case, something that was a particular challenge is that through the years in IT, we've had a fairly outsourced organization, especially for the more technical developer kind of roles. So that was a challenge for us because even if we wanted to bring new developers and new data engineers and skills like that, we really didn't have a good group internally to actually teach these new people. So how do you, at that point, we need to rely on external experts to help us actually build that capability inside. So for that part of the journey, you need those experts that have experience on building those things. Then the other thing that you need to consider as you evolve and now you are about implementing or in new emerging technologies, you need to have the top experts on those technologies. And a lot of cases, the top experts might not be those big firms. It might be just a startup company because these are new technologies, right? A startup company that focuses it on an area in particular. And that's the right kind of partnership that you need at that point. And then the third point is there are always changes in demand. Like the businesses, even through the year as they are executing on a strategy, there is a pandemic in the middle of the year or there are changes in the market and they need to react. So having a good balance always of internal capability and external capability gives you this variable resources pool that allows you to very quickly either expand your team if the demands just grow or shrink the team if the demand just reduces without having to hire and rehire people through all of those changes. So those are the three areas that I think we've learned is very important when you talk about talent.
Great insights. Really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you again to Bernardo, to the entire Spartan Digital team. We got so many great insights from everyone that we worked with in this case study. So thank you to all of you for sharing your experiences. I know it's going to be hugely beneficial for a lot of other companies who are starting down this path and being able to learn from your experiences. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for making time today to be here and part of this discussion and sharing your insights and experience. Thanks, everybody.